Chapter 30. Upon the day appointed, pursuant to the Chancery decision, the commissioners of both provinces, with remembrances and correspondence attached by a thronglet of children out of school, sailors, Irishmen, and other citizens exempt from or disobedient to the humorless rule of clock time here, all go trooping down to Cedar Street and the house in question to establish its north wall officially as the southernmost point of Philadelphia. 15 miles south of this, to the width of a red pubic hair, or RPH, will the west line run. The neighbours gather and mutter, "Well, ye would think they'd wait a bit. 80 years isn't enough. Way this town's growing, that south point'll be across the street and down the block before the week's out. Aye, moving even as we speak, hard to detain as a greased pig." The sector is borne in a padded wagon, like some mechanical odalisque. Children jump, flapping their arms in unconscious memory of when they had wings to see inside. "Why not use the south wall?" inquire several of them, far too pert for their sizes and ages. "The south wall lies within private property," replies the mayor's assistant. "So, as the southernmost public surface, the parties have agreed upon this north wall here, facing the street." Mr. Benjamin Locksley and his crew have been busily erecting an observatory in a vacant piece nearby, amid the mixed rhythms of hammers, each framer at his own slightly different tempo, and blurted phrases of song. "Done many of these, Ben?" "First one, but don't tell anybody. Pretty straightforward, regular joists and scantlings, nothing too exotic. Beyond this cone roof, trying to accommodate the tall one, spacing the collar beam so he won't thump his head when he stands up, though they'll be spending most of their time either sitting or upon their backs. Oh, now, Clovis, your bride is safe. 'Tis the only way for them to look straight up at the stars that pass high overhead, these being the best for the latitude, as they say." "Aye, and that great telescope tube thing ever pointing straight up? Heh. Why's it got to be that big?" "Don't break your rhythm, Hobab. I was quite enjoying it. The gents wish to measure this quite closely. Find and keep the latitude of their line to fractions of seconds of arc. The tube being the radius of the limb, see? A longer tube will swing you a bigger arc. Longer limb, longer divisions. More room between the markings. Easier reading. Nicer reading." Mr. Chew appears to be making a speech. "Shall we stop hammering till he's done?" Hobab inquires. "Other questions arise," Mr. Locksley gazing into the distance. "Your notion of futurity. Shall we continue to need contracts with these people? How soon do you expect our Saviour's return may render them void? Considerations like that." "I say, whenever you can, give 'em all a 21 hammer salute," growls Clovis. I say take their money, we don't have to love 'em, says Hobab. Or even marry 'em, adds young Elijah, the swamper. Here are the astronomers, Mr. Locksley notes. Perhaps you'd like to perhaps you'd like to share some of your analysis with them. God grant ye clear skies, gentlemen, shouting over the newly percussive activity of his crew. Dixon, removing his hat, tries out the doorway, goes in and lies supine upon the fresh sawn planking. Looking up, he sees Clovis, spread still as a spider among the radial rafters, watching him. Ask you something, sir. What thought have you given to getting that great tube in the door? Oh, Mr. Bird calculated the whole thing years ago over in England, all on paper, before there was ever scantling cut, before there was ever a screw cut for the instrument. I'll study on it. Thank you, sir. He tips a non-existent hat and descends. Mason looks in. Will we get it in the door, Dixon? Dixon stands up carefully. This is the very same wigwam we had at the Cape. No trouble, gents. We'll make ye a door it shall go in, promises the cheery Hobab. And out too, adds Elijah, from beneath a load of weatherboarding. Dixon, as a needleman, anxious to obtain the latest magnetical intelligence of the region that awaits them. Rumours reaching him of a coffee house frequented by those with an interest in the magnetic, however it may be manifested, shows up one night at the Flower de Luce in Locust Street. There, over the evening, he will find among the clientele German enthusiasts, quack physicians, land surveyors, iron prospectors, and watch thieves who know how to draw a half-hunter from one pocket into another with the swiftness of a lodestone clapping a needle to its influence. Strangers greet him as they might a friend of ancient standing, whilst others, obviously seeking to shun his company, glare whenever the fumes of tobacco allow them mutual visibility. He has no idea what any of it is about. Gently tacking among the crowd, he arrives at the bar. Evening, sir, what'll it be? Half and half, please. Mount Kenya double A, with Java Highland, perhaps a slug of boiled milk as well. Planning on some elevated discourse tonight, jests the coffee draper, swiftly and with little misdirection assembling Dixon's order. His wig shines with a nimbus in the strange secondary light from the mirror behind him. This may seem an odd question, sir, but have I been in here before? Goodness no, yet how many times a day do I get asked that very thing? Different visitors of different expectations. You strike me as the English tavern sort, and so you'll be noticing there's less reserve round here than you may be used to, though any who seek a quarrel may readily find it, yea, unto dirks and pistols, if that truly be your preference. Howbeit, make yourself at home, and good luck in America. Dixon, beamingly, adverts to the early crowd here, immediately noticing Dr. Franklin's friend Dolly, though she's certainly not as eye-catchingly rigged out tonight as he's seen her before, nor can he immediately spy any of her companions. Soberly consulting a large map upon a mahogany desktop. She holds a pair of silver dividers, multiply jointed, tending to white gold in the candlelight, and refers repeatedly to a book of numerical tables, now and then gracefully walking the instrument up and down and across its paper stage. When she looks up at last, he guesses from her eyes that she knows he's been there all the time. "Why, Mr. Dixon, well met." Holding out her hand, and before Dixon can begin to incline to kiss it, shaking his, as men do. "These data arrived by this instant, by the German packet, the latest declination figures. Our easterly movement in Pennsylvania, as it's been doing in latter years, decelerates yet. Here 'tis 4.5 minutes east," as Dixon attentively gazes over her shoulder. "When in the year 60 'twas 4.6. If you head south, 'twill be 3.9 at Baltimore." "Where are these measured heights?" he murmurs. "A very precipice." "What could be causing it, do you imagine?" "Hush. Something underground, moving westward." "Hush!" Her eyes rapidly sweep the vicinity. "No one ever speaks of that aloud here. What sort of incautious lad are you, exactly?" "Well, the usual sort, I guess." "Well," she pulls him into an alcove, "rather took you for an all-nations lad, myself." "Been there." The serving girls at the All Nations Coffee House are costumed in whimsical versions of the native dress of each of the coffee-producing countries. An Arabian girl, a Mexican girl, a Javanese girl, and, according to Dolly, a Sumatran girl as well. A constantly shifting pageant of allegorical coffees of the world, to some ways of thinking, in fact, quite educational, though attracting a core clientele louder, beefier, and altogether less earnest than Dixon by now expects to find in Philadelphia. Sumatran, thou say? You seem about to swoon, sir." He takes a delighted breath. "I don't know much of my story that may already have heard." "I don't know how much of my story thou may already have heard," bringing his chair closer, "or, to be fair to Mason, our story." She shifts her own chair away. "You and Mr. Mason are quite close, I collect." "Us? We get along. This is our second job together. The trick is all in staying out of each other's way, really. There are arrangements in the world," she explains, "too sadly familiar to women, wherein, as we say among us, with the one you get the other as well." Lass, what a suggestion. "We'd make that one only to our commissioners, I vouch, unless, that is, they're indicating some interest in Mason, or asking upon Molly's behalf," her eyelashes indulging in an extra bat. This gets very complicated, doesn't it? Mason does need to be out more, for fair. I'm but thinking of myself here. Ever been cooped up with a melancholic for days on end? Dolly shrugs. "Oh, aye. Molly sour apple. She's lucky I don't get like that. Two of us? Forget it." "I find it hard work to be cheery all the time," says Dixon. "As cheery as it seems I must." "Really, tell me all. The way your face begins to ache." Here's the optimist, wagging their thumbs. Mr. Franklin must get that all the time. Mr. Franklin does not confide in me, nor would I encourage him to. He is too charming, too mysterious, entirely the wrong sort for a great philosopher. Dixon touches the end of his nose. Ow! Shaking his finger back and forth. Need some filing down. Do excuse me. My tale is simple. I held my first mariner's compass when I was 9, an age when girls develop unforeseen yet passionate interests. I believed there was a ghost in the room. I walked with it, then everywhere. The first thing I understood was that it did not always point north, and it was the dips and deflections I grew most curious about. In my circumferences box, I learned to read what shapes lay beneath the earth, all in the needle's dance. Upon the fell, as if there were not enough already out there to bring me anxiety. I discovered my instrument acting as a cryptoscope into powers hidden and waiting the needles of intruders, set up as a picket to warn something within of any unannounced wish to enter. No creatures of the fowl I'd ever heard of enjoyed that much protection, being shabby, solitary, notable more for the irrational fierceness of their desires than for any elegance or justice in the enactment of them. You have impressed them in Maryland, she informs him. Cecilius Calvert, or as he is styled by some for his unreflexive effusions, the silliest Calvert. Though not by me, for I consider him subtle. He believes you a wizard, a douser of iron. Close attention to the instrument, a lot of backciting, repetition and frustration. Why disenchant them? If it's weird Geordie powers they wish, why, WGPs they shall have, and plenty of them too. Mr. Calvert offered me port in a silver cup, seemed quite merry. In most places it is termed giggling. They are geese down there. They imagine that you and your instrument will make of them nabobs, like Lord Lepton, to whose ill-reputed plantation you must be drawn upon your way west, resistlessly as the needle. Then, sailor among the Iron Isles, circumferenta swab, beware.